Hi, my name is Jacinda Montano, and I'm a mother of 4. I'm very family-oriented. We do a lot of quality experiences for our kids. We take them camping, we go wake surfing, we go on vacations. And the one thing, though, I try to make sure I do every day is give them a home-cooked meal. So I do love cooking, and we sit around the table every night and chat about our day and kind of check in. When I'm with my kids and my family, I'm 100% with them. I try to be 100% with whatever I do. So we play hard, but we also work hard. So when I'm working, I am working. And I've been doing this for 17 years now. I built my business very organically. It's all about word of mouth and great experiences and reputation. So over the years, I've tried to just give my clients the very best closing costs, the very best rates, and the very best experience in communicating with them. And because of that, they call me back and return to me. It grew, and actually surprised me that in 2020, I became the second largest producing female broker in the state of Utah. I started Ultima Home Lending so that we can provide a uniform client experience and have the technology to support us as loan officers and to support you as a realtor, which allows you to print a pre-qual letter at 2 in the morning all on your own. We provide low closing costs, low rates, but then also that expertise and support that not every brokerage can offer you. We created this summit because we wanted our realtors to be the best in the state. And we hope that as you've gone through the day that you have been able to take things home that can improve your business and make your client's experience even better. So fun following Mateen, man, right? Way to pump up the room. This is great. We can probably change it to our PowerPoint. That's okay. All right, so we are back here. I want to introduce you to Oscar. So he is one of our loan officers here. He actually used to work as an underwriter, so I'm sure there's been times where you wanted to kick an underwriter between the legs. But he is not that kind of underwriter. He was so good.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah, don't take your anger out on him.
Yeah.
But so he's British. We are an international company. How about that, right?
Which wraps up 100% of my identity.
So what's great is we did get a lot of love notes last year asking Oscar to come visit their brokerages. I'm going to have to just tell you right now, he is married. Sorry, Wendy, he is married. We cannot, give out his number, Although if you look him up online, you'll find his number because he is a loan officer. So it works. It works really good. So I think, let's see. Okay, how is this? Do I push the big green button? There we go. Okay. So, we wanted to go at the best time of day. We have the most interesting topic about the economy. Everyone loves the economy, and we wanted to go when you're like the most tired and your brain's like full of, all the day's events, and all you want to do is go home. So we decided to save us for last, so when you're just really fresh and sharp, right?
Yeah. The MBA is cool and everything like that, but interest rates, that's really...
Way more interesting.
So much more
Way more interesting.
So
we did get some caffeine. I did get, I'm going to have to apologize, you guys. I only drink water, period. That's all I drink. I never think about caffeine. And so I'm sorry for the lack of caffeine in the morning. I did have coffee out there, but I forgot about Cokes. Sorry. So I will try again next year. Please don't ruin me on the surveys about not having enough caffeine in the morning, okay? I'm sorry, but I do have some for the afternoon for our event. So here we go. We got that. So here's the housing market. We got the economy. Again, so interesting. If you can look on there, I don't know if you guys can read all those things, but we've got all these things impact what you do and what we do, right? Tons of things going into this. So this is one of my favorite slides, and we just decided we had to put it up there again because we have to let you know that the arch enemy to mortgage rates is inflation. Okay, so I want you to remember when you see Voldemort with the lock of nose and everything, I want you to think of inflation. Next, Harry Potter will never be the same for you again. Like, I'm serious. You're gonna be like, oh, we're watching about the economy again. So mortgage rates is Harry. Inflation is Voldemort. Anyone know why inflation hurts mortgage rates so much? Anyone want to take a guess? Anyone that remembered last year?
I don't know if I remember last year, but basically Yeah, so thank you. What's your name? Christopher, thank you. So mortgages, when you actually do a mortgage, they package those. You get like 30 mortgage, 50 mortgages, and they put it into a mortgage-backed security, okay? They're sold as bonds, right? So when you go into the bank and you get a CD, then those are really safe investments, and so with mortgages. So when you put in a 30-year CD, like a 30-year bond, basically, and you're getting a 2% rate of return on that 30-year that you put into that, but inflation's at 8%, are you making money or losing money? You're losing money. So when inflation is going higher than the rate of return you're getting, not a good investment, is it? So as inflation goes up, those 30-year bonds, they have to continue to go up to match it, right? So as inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up so that when they package those bonds on the secondary market, they can sell it for a high enough amount that someone's gonna actually buy those bonds. Does that make sense? That's a really big key concept to understand what the rest we're talking about. So I gotta make sure you guys understand that piece.
Yeah, so we obviously, as we said, we talked about this before. We showed this awesome picture of Voldemort last year. We talked about this before. So what we're going to dive into is what do things look like now? How have things changed over the last year? Where we're currently at with inflation? Inflation numbers are lower than where they're at. So we're going to dive in, talk about how that's affected things, where rates are at, and everything like that. So first of all, what is inflation? It is when your money is worth less than it used to be. So picture this cute little doll's house version of ground beef. So
anyone heard of shrinkflation? That's a new way, right?
So it's where you are no longer able to use the same money to buy the same goods. So they did a business survey back in July of this year and found that for the same goods, families were spending a lot more than they used to. So on average, $8,400 per year more on the same goods. That's crazy. That's so much. Like think of, that's a car payment and a couple credit cards or something like that. That's a big chunk of cash that's come out.
And this is a real number. I mean, this is a real number. Imagine that your budget just went up $709. Like from what you buying the exact same stuff, you now pay $709 more a month on those same services. Is anyone feeling the pinch? Has anyone felt the pinch in this room? Have you felt that in your pocketbooks? That's your effect of inflation.
Yeah. So inflation has come down from a little bit of where it's at, right? So the Federal Reserve, what they're trying to get to is 2%. So that's the number that they're aiming for, right?
Personally, I don't think they should be shooting for 2%, but go ahead.
Yeah, so a whole other thing as well. So we've come down from the rate of where we're at. So last June, overall inflation, we hit as high as like 9-something%. In Europe, over in the motherland, it went even higher. It went up to like 11% or something like that. So sucks to be England. That's why I'm here. But think of it, when inflation, the rate has come down. So now we're in kind of the 4 to 5 range-ish is where we're at, depending on whether we're talking, what kind of inflation.
But there is one concept I need you guys to really make sure you understand, because most people, when I'm talking about inflation and they say it's coming down, you say, okay, inflation before this craziness went on was around 2%. Then we had some crazy like 9% appreciation, right? I mean, there was that weird thing that eggs for a little while there. They were just like, dude, I didn't know my chickens were so valuable, you know what I mean? So then the inflation, they're like, oh, it's down to like 3%. And you're kind of like, it doesn't really feel like it's come down, right? And because in people's minds, they think, okay, if I'm paying this much at 2% inflation and now it's come down, I should see that coming down, right? But it's not. It's the speed at which inflation is still rising, right? So it's acceleration. So if you're going on the freeway and you're going 20 miles an hour, and then we sped up to 60 miles an hour, and then we're back down to 30 miles an hour, are you still back down where you were 2 miles down the freeway, like back behind you? No, it's cumulative. Like we are still accelerating at that pace. So it's not like it's come down in the fact that we're still paying $709 more per month, and it's still increasing. It's still going faster, okay? So when they say inflation's down, everyone should be happy. You're not going to see that in your pocketbook directly.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff is crazy expensive still. And just one quick side note, just so everyone's aware, when they're calculating inflation, home prices is not part of that. But they're looking at rent. They're looking at basically anything you could purchase and consume. But on this graph, much better than my face. On this graph here shows what inflation has done since kind of the Fed's outset. So the Federal Reserve was created at the end of 1913, and we can see, and this is like if you had $100, what you could buy back then compared to right now. So even though around a little bit of inflation each year is what they've looked like, over that time period, the cumulative inflation is 2,812%, which is awesome.
Which is why I don't think it should be 2%, because you're constantly aiming for an increase that continues to compound, right? So personally, I don't think we should be aiming for a 2% inflation, personally. But anyone want to guess, like, what happened in the early 1970s that caused inflation to really start to diverge? So I hear oil. Any other guesses? The gold standard. You're right. So we initially kind of went off it in the 30s, I think it was, and we officially left it in the 1971. And ever since that time, inflation has really started to go up because we no longer have to tie the dollar to an actual amount that you have in the bank. So they can just print as much money as they want. And when you print money, that causes inflation to go up. So that's why it's different.
Yeah, exactly. So, gold standard. So what does the Fed do about this, right? And we've talked about this before. You guys have probably heard this to death, but I'll run through it one more time. So the Federal Reserve, what they do to try and combat inflation is this lever that they have called the federal funds rate. So you hear all the time, the Fed is raising rates. What they're doing is they don't have the ability to affect raising mortgage rates. The Federal Reserve is not raising mortgage rates. It's not what they're doing.
They can't.
They can't. They don't have that power. But what they do have the power to do is raise what's called the federal funds rate. And there's a bunch of even more boring topics that goes into that more. But it deals with lending on the bank side, and it filters into short-term rates. And so what this lever does is it slows down.
We're talking about boat loans, RVs, credit cards, money markets. It's the ones on the short term, like overnight rates, or just a short-term loan compared to a 30-year bond. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. So what the Federal Reserve does, and what they're doing right now, is because inflation is such a problem, because it's come down from where it's at, but it's taking a long, long time to get to where it needs to be. And so they've pushed that up, and they've pushed it right to the top. It hasn't been as high as it is currently for a long, long time. And so, do you want to click the next one? So what they've done is, and we can see at the end of how high they've done it compared to in the past. And so they're at kind of the end of their raising cycle, which what it's supposed to do is to slow down the economy. So, when credit card bills start going up, car loans start going up and things like that, people have less money to go out and spend. And so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to slow the economy down to bring that inflation down. And then the opposite.
So when you get your car loan and you can see in the 2020, you can see how it went to almost zero. It's like flatlined on the interest rate. So now you can get a car loan and your car payment was $300. Well, now you're paying a lot higher interest rate. So now your car loan for the same car is now $500. You no longer have the $200 of discretionary spending. So that's $200 that you're no longer spending in the economy. So they're raising rates so that you don't have as much money to spend, right? And you pull that money out of the market, and now demand goes down because you don't have as much money to buy stuff with, right? So that's how they're trying to get that inflation to come down, because inflation is high demand and low supply, and it just pushes those prices up. So that's how the Fed's trying to slow down the economy.
Exactly. So when times are crappy, like during the pandemic, they drop that rate down to try and push people on. That's why you had people getting like 0.99% car loans and crazy stuff like that. So that's what they try and do to push it on. And so you can see them dropping.
Just
that
out of curiosity,
2020.
in 2020, did anyone have a phone call from one of their clients asking if mortgage rates were really 0%? I had those. They were like, wait a minute, what? I thought it was zero. I'm like, I wish.
There would never exist a refinance ever again.
We would hold on to that one.
Yeah, for sure. So the question is, because over the last, so back in March of 2022, this is when the Fed started being like, oh goodness, inflation might be a problem, and started like making an effort to change that. And so incrementally, they've bumped that up a little bit over time. So the question is, why don't they just, do it and just pull it all the way up at one time rather than doing it incrementally over the last 18 months?
So I mean, you kind of got to think of the economy as like a huge ship, right? And I just got off a cruise last week. It was wonderful. And actually, the cruise ships nowadays have those side thrusters they can turn on a dime. So it's probably not a good example on the cruise ships. But back in the old days.
She just wanted to tell you she went on a cruise.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. That's where my tan came from. Thank you. But the ships, like when they start to turn a ship, they're turning, and you see no progress, right? And eventually, it really starts catching up, and then you start turning. If you've overturned, you're trying to overcorrect again. Like it becomes a real nightmare. You have to be nice and slow and take it slowly, especially with an economy as big and robust as ours is. If you jacked those interest rates up to 15%, wouldn't that be like, hey, we can just get rid of inflation just like that, right? But the problem is we have a little something that happened where it destabilizes the financial markets. Anyone heard of Silicon Bank? Yeah, wasn't that fun? Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, there's more that boils down into those banks, but they're operating kind of at risky levels, but the assets they're holding on to, their short-term assets, when the Fed raised rates, their values went down. And so because they're operating at risky levels, they were the first ones to fall.
So what happens is when you go to your bank and you give them money, they don't keep that money in the vault. They actually take that money and reinvest it, right? So as interest rates went up, what happened to savings accounts? Did they go up or down? The interest rate on your savings account, did it go up or down? Up, right? So now all of a sudden you had all this money in an account and you're like, I'm getting paid 1% and I could take this money out, go give it to this bank, and they're gonna pay me 5%. Would that be a smart move to do? Yeah, 100% we're gonna do that. So you go to the bank and you're like, hey, I want my money. Well, you have so many people come to the bank that want their money. They don't have all that money, they're not liquid. So now they have to go in and sell off their assets, okay? If they're gonna go do that, guess where a lot of them put their money in? Treasury bills. Bonds, basically, when they were giving a 1% return, 2% return. So we already talked about how you have to kind of hire the coupon rate for someone to go out and buy those bonds. The banks have a problem. They're like, okay, someone could buy a new bond that we're trying to sell, and they could get a 7% return, and we're trying to sell them and saying, hey, you get a 2% return. Which one are you going to take? Are you going to take that 2% return, or are you going to take the 7% return? You're not going to buy their bond. They have assets that no one will buy. Does that make sense? They can't liquidate unless they actually gave like a big chunk of money like to make up for that percentage. So that's when they got in trouble. They weren't liquid enough, and what things they'd had, because the interest rates went up so fast, they didn't have any buyers. They didn't have a way of liquidating the money to give to their clients. And that's where you have the destabilization in the financial markets.
Yeah, so we saw those ones fold, and if they'd done it quicker, we probably would have seen more fold, and it would have been a bigger banking contagion. So the question really, that's all fun stuff and everything like that, but let's get into the nitty gritty, right? So inflation's come down a little bit from where we're at. We talked about that. We're at a lower rate, right? The federal funds rate, they've come to probably the top of where they're going to go. Most likely, if they go any higher, it won't be much higher than where they're at right now. So what gives, right? So inflation's come down. Federal funds rate's up. Why are rates where they're at right now? What is going on? Like, how come it hasn't come down as we've seen inflation dip down a little bit? So let's hop into that a little bit.
So the other part is like the federal fund rate, the Fed increasing those interest rates is only one tool, and it's a really big one, but it can't be the only tool. So it is important that we have our legislative bodies creating policies that actually help with anti-inflationary policies that help pull that money out or stop throwing money into the economy. So when you're looking at these things, and I'm sorry I'm kind of broaching a little bit of politics, again, so interesting, right? We've got the best topics. We have to remember that it is our job as citizens to recognize what's really best for our economy and our jobs. And that is making sure that the policies that are enacted also help America, right? Help us have a strong economy. So for example, you have an energy policies. So those energy policies affect you directly. Energy makes the world go round. Those gas prices make the world go round. Everything nowadays, I mean, how many people, I'm gonna admit this, I rarely go to the store. How many people shop at Amazon 90% of their shopping? Yeah, me too. You're my peeps. So those are delivered right to my door, right? I'm gonna have them spend the gas money, not me, right? And those energy costs impact transportation all around the world, even on the ships, everything. So if you put out bills that are actually positive toward that, instead of hurting our energy costs, that's actually gonna help that economy recover. Does that make sense? So and I could actually give you about 7 different sectors that we need to have some better policies from our government to help with the economy.
But what does Mr. Jerome have to say? So Mr. Jerome Powell, we, as a mortgage loan officer, I hear his name way too often. But basically, he's the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So he, basically every time he has the opportunity to speak, he says almost the exact same thing. Like ChatGPT created and said, hey, here's your talk topics for the next 12 months, say the exact same thing. And so basically what he says almost every single time is, we are not done on the fight against inflation. So we've come down from where we're at, right? And it's great that we're at where we're at, but there's still a ways to go, right? If we're in 4 or 5% of inflation, that's still over double the rate of where we need to be at. So he's saying it's great, we've come down a lot of ways, but there's still ways to go. And so if inflation was like a 1 month thing, right, like we hit a peak, came straight back down, that wouldn't really affect mortgage, like that wouldn't have a big problem with mortgage rates. But where it does have a problem is where it lingers and lasts for a long time. And so that's what he's saying is we're needing to be strict to try and like push it all the way down as far down as where we're at. So we have come down, but there still is ways we need to, you know, a little bit more of where we need to get to. So
yeah, at this point, inflation's kind of baked into the economy a little bit, and he only has one lever, and he's kind of used it as much as he can. So it really does need to come from other sources to finish getting us there. So a really easy rule of thumb to remember, because like this can get kind of like, how does that work again? Is when you have good economic news, when the economy is strong, that actually drives investors to buy stocks. And they take their money out of bonds that are more safe. So when you have good economy news, it actually that's bad for mortgage rates, right? So it's kind of inverse. So good news for the economy, bad for rates, rates go up, okay? Opposite's true. When you have things that are like declining, the recession's coming, like those kind of things, people fly to bonds, and that makes rates go down. How many would you guys like to see rates go down? Hey, so guess what? I'm not Debbie Downer when I say, hey, we got a recession coming, right? So don't get mad at me. I'm like, this is actually good news. We actually have rates coming down soon. So that's going to help us get more houses.
Exactly. So this is one part as well. So we talked about inflation. This is one other part as well that's really, really affecting interest rates right now. Because despite where the Fed raising their federal funds rate really high, we've still had a lot of reports recently have shown economic strength or jobs report strength. So we're going to be digging into those a little bit and peeling back layers and taking a look at what we think is coming, or what possibly could be coming. But yeah, just like Jacinda was saying, I guess we're just cheering for the negative a little bit, but it's like that's the way it works, because mortgage rates are really dictated by bonds, and as people are wanting bonds when stuff's really crappy, that makes interest rates great. So
I got some good news for you too. Okay, so everyone's scared of a recession coming, but if you're a realtor and loan officer, guess what? We're not. Okay, we are not scared of recessions. I'll tell you why. So during a recession, historically, all but 2008. So we all know 2008 is not the same thing. There was a big whole other thing going on. We can talk about that more later. But except for 2008, during a recession, home prices, what do you think happened to home prices? They go up. What, any other guesses? So home prices actually either remain stable or increase. In all the last recessions since I started tracking it, that's what happens to home prices. Is that good for you guys? Yeah. We're not going to have a huge dropout and all of a sudden your $400,000 condo that they just bought is now worth $100,000. Okay, so recession's coming, but that's actually good news for us.
Someone said interest rates come down. One of the people right here. So that's another thing as well, because I think oftentimes we hear recession or something, economic downturn, and we think a lot of buyers are no longer going to be part of the market. There's already been a lot of buyers that have come out of the market because of interest rates, and so that are waiting in the wings for the opportunities to come in. So I actually believe that a recession or an economic downturn would actually push rates up further as the demand still exists.
Or house prices.
House prices, yep, thank you.
Okay.
As the demand that still exists out there will come back into the market. As we can,
sorry, go ahead.
one last thing. We can obviously see this fun little drop at the end, and I'm sure you guys have all seen. But that is completely not to do with that. That has to do with just the fact of us appreciating way too quickly. And as we've all seen, we've seen a bit of stabilization with that.
So if you remember last year, I was saying, hey, we had like a 22% appreciation in 2022. It was more than ever been recorded. So you can see that huge jump in a very short amount of time. And I said, hey, you know what? It's going to come down a little bit, but it's not coming down all the way. You know what I mean? And so you can see exactly that. Like it came down maybe a third from what it was before, and it's kind of holding strong. So kind of curious, just a quick survey. How many feel like house prices, we're either going to have, so we'll have you raise your hand on one of these, either are still accelerating, stabilized, or decreasing. So all those who feel like house prices are accelerating still, raise your hand. Okay, all those who feel like house prices have stabilized, raise your hand. Okay, and then how those who feel like it's house prices are still dropping, raise your hand. Got a few. Okay, so that's kind of cool to see it seems like most of the room is around stabilization, and probably the second is still acceleration. So we will actually go over those numbers in just a minute. Might surprise you.
Yeah. So let's hop into a few other things that are affecting mortgage rates right now, or basically bonds, which in turn affects mortgage rates.
Okay, so this is according to Jacinda. In 2008, the Fed started doing what we call quantitative easing. Have you guys ever heard QE, quantitative easing? So what happened is they had a major housing problem, and they had to stimulate the housing problem. So they came in and said, okay, we're going to buy mortgage-backed securities. That's our main goal. So our number one purchaser of mortgage-backed securities, so again, those bonds that we sold in those secondary markets, were purchased by the Fed. So the Fed comes in and starts buying them. So if you have a huge demand of these mortgage-backed securities, what happens to those rates? We don't have to pay as high of a coupon rate anymore, right? It keeps pushing those mortgage rates down. That stimulates the people going in and buy a house because they can get a house for cheap because the economy was crap, and they are able to jump on some better rates than was happening before that. So what they've been doing since, I think, third quarter last year?
Since spring of 2022.
2022, yeah. What they started doing is what they said quantitative tightening, so called QT. And the Fed pulled back their spending. So they kept pulling back really fast how much they were buying of mortgage-backed securities, and we lost our biggest purchaser of mortgages. So that's when we started seeing rates starting to jump up real fast. Okay, we didn't have our person who's buying those rates anymore. Then, not only were they kept pulling back how much they were spending, what they call falling off the balance sheet, when people refinanced or they finished paying off their mortgage, instead of taking those funds and reinvesting it back into those bonds, they weren't doing that either. So they've been pulling back. Now, again, this is just according to me, but my personal feeling is, because no one's talking about this, it's also one of the reasons rates are still so high, but I think that come very soon here, probably next year, early next year, there's a small election coming up, and I think there's going to be someone in office that wants people to feel real good about the economy. And I think they're going to shift gears and go back to quantitative easing. And they're going to start doing what they can to pull those mortgage rates down so that people feel like they can own a home again and they can have those opportunities, and they're going to feel real good when it comes time to cast a vote on how the economy is doing. So I think, we're not allowed to even ask questions about the quantitative tightening. It's not even a subject line out there, and yet it's actually a huge thing of what's going on in our industry. I think that's a wild card they're pulling in their back pocket to make changes real quick. So I do see on the horizon rates coming down, and that's one of the reasons I see it coming down is because I think they're going to flip the switch and go back to quantitative easing and pull those mortgage rates down as fast as they can.
Yeah. So 2 other things, and these are smaller but still to be aware of. Whenever there's a lot of extra competition for mortgage bonds, that has an upward push on rates as well. So one thing is corporations, businesses are issuing lots of debt and bonds right now. That has an upward push, and then as well. International buyers of treasuries, of U.S. treasuries, it's like China and Japan, they've kind of scaled down a little bit, not at an aggressive rate or anything like that, but just aren't buying quite as many U.S. treasuries as they once were. And so that means there's a lot more bonds again that are on the market competing with mortgage-backed securities. So
it's so funny. He keeps bringing in the international stuff. I'm like, dude, why are you talking about other countries besides America? And
It's
he's
my
like,
only
well,
card. That's all I got.
there's England too, Jacinda. You know what I mean? So we're getting both sides for you guys. He helps keep me well-rounded and not just think about us.
Yeah. It's good to look outside.
So anyone feel like some credit card debt's gone up a little bit? I think some people kind of still feel like it's my-teens up here and the party's still going, And they're like, hey, everything's good, everything's free. Like when I go into Costco, that kind of happens to me. I feel like this is a weakness of mine. I love Costco. I hate shopping. It's Amazon and Costco, that's it. And I walk through the doors, and it's the craziest thing, but Costco puts pheromones in the air that make you feel like it's free, like everything's free. And everything's a good deal. Everything's on sale. I'm like, hey, if it's at Costco, it's a good deal. I don't even have to look up this item on Amazon. I already know that this is the cheapest place I can get it. And guess what? They take Visa. They no longer American Express. I got all kinds of visas we can do, They're magic cards. They're magic. I just give it to them, and they give it to me, the stuff. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's been a lot of this, party time with the teen going on in the economy. And credit card debt is surpassed what it's ever been. It's over $1 trillion. $1 trillion in credit card debt. This is actually important for you as a realtor. And you know why? Guess how the number one way people get out of credit card debt? Well, I heard bankruptcy. That's good. That's true. Yep, that is a good one too. I didn't even think about that one. I heard refinancing. So
we're trying to be positive, guys. Come on, let's not go straight to bankruptcy.
Refinancing and also selling their home, right? And taking that equity, paying off the debt, and then taking enough to buy a new home. You guys are part of a vehicle that actually builds wealth for your clients. That gives them, so hopefully if they get in that situation, you're part of the solution. You're one of the reasons they're able to build wealth in a way that they can actually have a way out.
Exactly. So, it's taking up a huge portion of their budget, right? So credit card bills and as well student loan payments just barely started again this month. That sucks as well. And so there's big portions of people's monthly budget that are being sliced down. That again, as Jacinda said, brings in an opportunity for us as well. But also in terms of the economy, that's less dollar bills that are going to be able to be outspent in the economy. And then as well, adjustable. This is great. This is my friend Brian. But other things like, do you want to click it again, by the way?
Oh yeah, go ahead and start saying it.
But yes, so the other thing as well is commercial debts and adjustable rate mortgages. Those have gone up as well. So there's been a lot of pressure on companies as well. So again, less possible spending that's going to be out in the economy. And then as we're just on the same kind of train with where we're talking about credit card debt, we've got our friend Brian, and he has great credit card debt. So he, across the US, we, stuff has just gone up by an exponential number, as Jacinda was talking about. The fact that you can just walk into a clothing department store and finance a t-shirt over 6 months or something like that. It's nuts. And so
that's because it's up $709 from the last month. So you kind of have to start financing those things.
You're going to be down to one t-shirt at some point. So, the question is, and as I mentioned, we talked about in the beginning, there has been many reports that have shown economic strength. So the question that we're just posing back to you is, can it last? can stuff move forward at the same train that it's currently been moving at as these increased pricing pressures are going to be on people across the US?
So just one thing to note here, the median credit card debt. So you guys know that median is not average. It's the number that falls right in the middle, right? The median credit card debt has gone, last year was $4,000, is now $8,000. That's a big difference here. And I'm serious when I say, when you can talk to your clients and educate them and let them know that this is their number one way to build wealth, you are doing them a service. I can't tell you the number of people that I've helped get out of a financial situation that they would never be able to do without doing bankruptcy. And it's because they owned a home.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you'll hear a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that, people don't want to lose their interest rate, that awesome interest rate that they have on their home. But the real fact of the matter is, it's all about how much money they have in their account at the end of the month, right? Like, that interest number is great. Like, it's cool to talk about family barbecues and everything like that you've got this awesome rate, which nobody at the family barbecue wants to hear. But the real fact of the matter is, how many dollar bills are they going to be saving each month? And if they have all of these other debts, it is still an opportunity, despite that shift in rate not being a super, super fun one.
So one thing that they talk about is the jobs report, and you keep hearing, oh, jobs are so awesome, they're so strong, everything. And so I just wanted to kind of break this down for you a little bit. I try not to do too many graphs. We actually had a ton of graphs. We actually took out 10 graphs. I'm like, they're going to snooze.
Yeah,
I promise
I'm
you.
graph happy.
I'm like, you put another graph in, Oscar.
Yeah, 1 in 12.
But I did put this one in because I wanted to show you the jobs. Okay, so the thing I want you to zoom in on is that middle section with the big red arrow flashing right there. What this is trying to show you is that in 2022, the average jobs that were created and put into the market were almost 400,000. Okay, now this is done in August, is when these last numbers were here. So the 12-month average since August, it went down to 257,000. Okay, that's a slowdown, right? Then if you just look at the last 6-month average, we're at 100 and, I need some glasses. Okay, 194. And now if you just look at the last 3 months, this is from August, we're down to 150, no? 257. Yeah, so 194, then now we're at 150, right? So 150,000 jobs. So we went from a $400,000 jobs, 400,000 jobs being created, to we're now at 150,000 jobs being created on average.
Yeah, so
that's a slowdown in the jobs market. That's a slowdown of those jobs being created, and that's showing a huge indicator that recession is right here. We're knocking on our door.
Yeah, exactly. So this is another thing. This is my favorite graph. Just kidding. I don't play favorites. I love them all equally. So, but this one is one that gets touted a lot when it comes to things to do with the economy. The number one predictor.
Before he starts, though, okay, I'm just going to tell you. So, like, when Oscar speaks, he sounds so intelligent. Like, it's the English accent.
It's a great cover for my ignorance.
So this is actually one way for you to sound intelligent. You could be like, yeah, well, there's the inverted yield curve. Like, you could say inverted yield curve, and people are like, wow, that guy's really intelligent. Like, that woman really knows what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So we're gonna give you some language so you can sound like Oscar. Okay? There we go.
Yes. So basically, in a healthy economy, a longer term has a higher interest rate than a shorter term. Think a 30-year mortgage compared to a 15. 30-year mortgage is always going to be a higher rate. A 6-year CD is always going to have a higher return than like a 6-month CD. When that's flopped.
Well, hold on. So this is literally showing you, if you went into the bank and you got a 10-year CD, right, and the amount that is paying you is less than the 2-year CD. Do you think that sounds right? If you went into the bank and they said, okay, you can give me your money for 10 years and I'm going to give you a 5% interest rate, and or you can take this 2-year CD and we'll tie up your money for 2 years, but we'll give you 7%. Which one are you going to take? The 7%, right? That's what this graph is showing you, that when the 10-year is lower than the 2-year, like when you take minus the 2, basically that's conceptually wise, that's what's going on here. You're getting a better return from a shorter term investment. That's showing the economy is sick. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And every time you can see below, so the gray bars are when there's been recessions, including that little cute mini one for the pandemic over there. So we can see each time that we've gone below that line. So below the line means negative. There's been a recession that's followed it. And that's happened over and over and over again. And the most similar economy to us right now is back in the 70s, 80s. That's the most similar one. And we can see, we've gone way below that bar recently. Most similar, again, to what we saw in the 80s and 70s, where, again, we saw recessions right there as well.
Okay, this one's my favorite graph.
Yeah, your favorite.
If I were to have my favorites there. So if you look at this, again, this is the Fed fund rate. This one's kind of hard. I wish we could make these bigger and more clear for you. But this is showing you that when the Fed fund rate is lower, when the 10-year Treasury is higher than the Fed fund rate, lower than the Fed fund rate, that a recession follows. It's only happened 4 times in the last 40 years, and it's happened again. We're right there again. So another evidence, I'm telling you, there's so many points of data that show that a recession's looming, and I know that normally I'm like, wow, she's a freaking downer up there, but this is I probably should say it like this. The recession's looming, guys. It's coming. We're right there. I'm so excited. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there. We got recession. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I really am, actually.
We want the best for everybody, but yeah, we also want low rates. So I mean, it's when the federal funds rate has gone above where the 10-year Treasury is at. Wow, man, we blazed through our time. It feels like, all right, okay. So let's hop into what this all means for you guys, because this is great, boring information, but what the heck can we do with it? So,
okay, I want you to see, raise your hands, okay? Here's the excuses that I think are most popular for you guys that you hear from your clients. How many have heard that they're waiting for rates to go down before they buy? Okay, so a lot of them. How about waiting for the market to crash and house prices fall? All right, this is one you have to educate them on because most people don't know that's not going to happen. Don't want to give up their low rate. They're like, you're going to have to peel this low rate from my dead, cold hands. I am not moving. I am staying right here because that's really nice for my pocketbook, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll dive into each of these.
Or how about they don't have a down payment? Anyone have that one? Okay. And what about they don't have a good enough credit score? Okay. We're going to show you how to get around all these. So get your notebooks out. We're going to tell you how to get over every single one of these objections.
And we're doing 4 minutes flat. So here we go.
All right, I'm going to give you time to read this for a second. Anyone that doesn't own a home and they're complaining about the interest rate, your best rebuttal is if you don't want a 7% interest rate, why are you paying 100%? Right?
Yeah.
You're paying 100% of your money to nothing, just like interest, right?
Yeah,
so there's your first rebuttal.
Will set them straight. So, yeah, that's the thing. It's all you're doing is lining people's pockets. So this is one of.
We were having a team meeting, and one of my loan officers brought this up, and I'm like, that is so brilliant. It's 100% true. You could have your client can either decide to either overpay the seller or overpay the bank. That's what their choices are. Now, recently, were we overpaying the seller? Do you guys remember when we were doing bid over ask? $40,000 over asking price, you're overpaying the seller. How long do you think it takes to make back that $40,000? Right? Or $30,000 or whatever that was over asking price. How many loved that time? Yeah, not so much. Well, guess what? We're not overpaying the seller. You might be overpaying the bank. But if you're overpaying the bank, how many payments are you overpaying the bank before you can refinance when rates go down? You're talking maybe 7 months, a year, max 2 years. If I'm right, less than a year, they'll be overpaying a few payments, and then that's it. So should they be waiting until house prices either go up or down, whatever it is, and rates go down? Guess what's going to happen when rates go down? It's a feeding frenzy, isn't it? And do you think it's going to come back to bid over ask again, where they're going to be overpaying the seller? So if you are doing your clients a service, have them buy a home now. I can't overstress this. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 18 years. And the last couple of years have probably been the hardest for different reasons. You know what I mean? When they were doing that bid over ask, that was like gut wrenching. You know what I mean? Having 20 offers in, and how hard did you guys work showing up home after home after home, writing offer after offer after offer, just to get it, be in competition and not get those those offers. Right now, you can write an offer and have a really well written offer, and you get them in a home, and we can take care of the rate later, right? So 100%, don't let them give you that excuse of waiting until rates come down, because house prices aren't going to come down. That recession's coming. They're going to regret not buying a house right now.
Yeah, if they can afford it, still a great idea.
So remember we talked about what we're thinking about with house prices, if they've gone up, down, stabilized. These are sources for all the people that track appreciation. And if you notice here at the end that we're on track for housing appreciation to be between 5 and 9%. Some people are guessing about 5.5%. Yeah.
Is this national or is this?
This is national. This is national numbers. So this isn't just Utah, this is everywhere. But that's what's happening across the nation, is house prices are still increasing, right? So the waiting for house prices to go down, you have to be able to overcome that rebuttal with them and educate them. This is just something to kind of come back with them at. If you tell them and say, look, if you wait, if you have a 5% appreciation, that's what they're expecting, is a 5% appreciation each year. Like, we're looking at an 18% appreciation over the next 5 years is what they're anticipating. And if you wait, so if you buy a $500,000 house, in 5 years, your equity that you're going to have in there is $90,000. You're going to miss out on $90,000. And that's that $90,000 that's going to help them get out of credit card debt as well. You know what I mean? Like, they need you to help them. We're going to go, help me help you, right? Like, let's make sure we're educating them, because they're going to depend on you. You're the expert, and you got to explain to them what's really coming down the road. It's not what they think. They're thinking 2008. This is not 2008. We're not going to have the same thing that we did in 2008. I promise you, it won't be the same. So please, please be their advocate.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're so, time goes by fast up here. So just one thing to remember, I'll put this very simply. In 2008, we had a huge decrease in birth rate. And people were building houses as if we're going to have the same amount of demand going on. So what happened is they're building those houses with that same acceleration, and that birth rate dropped off to nothing. And so the people that should have been there to buy the houses didn't exist. And it exposed a huge housing bubble, along with some major lending issues. It wasn't our fault. We were doing perfect loans. But there's other people, like the other people, actually I'm being real, it was the other people doing those bad loans, but there was a lot of other issues going on. But the demand was a true housing bubble there. How many feel like there's a housing bubble right now? You're all right, that's correct. There is no housing bubble. There was actually an explosion of birth rate 33 years ago. There is a pent-up demand, and there's only reason why it's not a feeding frenzy right now is just because of rates and house prices. They've just priced people out of the market. But there's going to be we have a major inventory shortages across the nation. So we're just going to have to skip this slide and this slide.
Yeah. Yes. So let's hop into it. So I can bet, I guarantee with every penny that I own
I can predict
the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I swear, and you can come at me and
you can record this right now.
you
He is
can
going to
record
predict the future. I
So-
promise you. It's going to be the coolest magic trick you've seen all day.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So rates are going to do one of three things, right, in the future. So there we go. Yeah, I know. I'm really covering my bases. So, but some more likely than others. But yeah, they are going to do up, sideways, or down. Crazy, right? But. I know. As long as I am incredibly vague, I will never be proven wrong. So, but seriously, let's dive into this, right? Just really briefly, let's dive into this scenario and let's see what this looks like for a home buyer. Let's say someone says interest rates are going up and they're going to be higher in the future than they are right now. Well, if someone is really wanting to purchase a house and has the means to purchase a house, it's only going to get harder. right? It's going to be more expensive for them to buy a house in the future than it is right now because rates are going to be more expensive in the future than they are right now. So if they believe rates are going up, it's better to buy now than in the future. If rates are going sideways and they're in a position to purchase a house right now, it's not going to be better for them in the future, right? You're buying a house at the same rate, and the difference is that you haven't gained the appreciation that you could have had if you bought the house right now. So you missed out on the appreciation, and the interest rate's the same as it was if you purchased it now and down the line. Or let's say this is my favorite one, but let's say it's the situation where interest rates go down, right? And you have someone saying, well, I don't want to buy right now because I'll buy in the future when interest rates are better and it's cheaper for me to purchase a house. Well, in that situation, you might miss out on your perfect house because now you're having to compete with 20 other people who also want that house. You're having to pay more on that same house, and you could have had that rate anyway. Because if you purchased right now, bought the house that you wanted, got in the house that you wanted, you bought it at the price that you wanted, and then refinance to the rate that you wanted. And so in all of those scenarios, if you, and again, I say this first of all, because I vehemently believe that no one should buy a place that they can't afford. But if they can afford it, regardless of what happens to rates, if rates keep going up, if rates go sideways, or if rates go down, it is still in a borrower's best interest to buy a home. So that is, according to me, with my infinite knowledge of the future, how that affects home
See,
buyers.
isn't it amazing? I got you a crystal ball. This is great.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people paying a lot for a crystal ball. Do I got $100, $200?
Is that at Costco? Or where are you buying those crystal balls?
We're going to auction you off.
I don't think my wife would be okay.
I told you Wendy's married. I'm sorry. That's the best I could do. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up with this. I feel like it's best to learn from the giants that are our leaders in the past. There's so many lessons to learn from them. So anyone heard of a man called Thomas Edison? Okay. Anyone know what he's famous for? The light bulb. Was it a good picture hint? I don't know. Anything else? Do you know what he invented? Any other inventions you guys know he's made? Yeah, he actually ended his life. He had over 2,000 patents. And did you know that no one actually surpassed that up until I think it was 2010? That someone had as many patents as him. He was amazing. Did you know that as a little boy, he could not focus in school. He was the worst student. And his mom realized that this wasn't going to work. So she pulls him out of school and she homeschools him. And he had such an inquisitive mind. It never stopped working. And he would actually go out and do what Mateen told him and just hit the grind, right? He would work his butt off all day to earn enough money to buy things that he can use for experiments. He would pay for his own experiments. And just constantly creating, working, and he never ever looked at anything as defeat. Like, it was never a failure. It was always another way of discovery, another way of not to do something, but it was never a failure. He lived his life like that all the time. He slept actually a lot of times in 2-hour increments because he was just so excited to get up and keep working. And his mind just never shut off. It was always looking for solutions. And until tragedy happened, right? So in 1914, he's 67 years old, and he is the king of the film industry. The reason we have Hollywood is him. He created film, the moving picture. And the film that was made of at that time was really explosive, the chemicals, and it exploded in his warehouse and started a crazy fire. It just caught and it just spread really quickly. And within 1 hour, 13 buildings were on fire. So everyone's coming running. Here he is, looking at his entire life's work up in flames. He's 67 years old. What would you do? Would you be like, well, I was thinking about retirement anyway, That's probably what I would be doing. Well, I guess I'm done, So he's looking at this fire. Everything, all of his inventions, everything is in these flames. And his son comes, and he sees his dad, and he's just like, Dad, you know what I mean? He looks at his son with childlike wonder. He's got sparkle in his eyes. He's like, son, go get your mother. and all of her friends, go get them all. They're never going to see a fire like this again. True, that's literally his response. And his son was just like, and he's just like, it's okay. I'll start again tomorrow. Now, I can tell you, the next day, he got all of his people together. And he's like, okay, I need you to go find every single warehouse that's empty in the building and start renting it out. He started the next day, gave him a list, everything going on, got all the assignments out. He walks away, and as an afterthought, turned around and said, oh, and by the way, does anyone know where we can get some money? Money was not his focus, was not his challenge. It was solving the problem. And you know what's so interesting to me? That night, he's seeing these firemen working in this haze and like trying to put out these fires, and they couldn't see because of the smoke. And you know what? It just started his brain thinking again. And within 3 days of the fire, he invented a searchlight that penetrated the haze. In the middle of a fire, in the middle of his life going up in flames, he's still looking for solutions to problems. I can tell you, when like I told you, I've been doing this for 18 years, and I'm looking at the fire in my industry right now. I'm looking at the fire in front of me. And I would say this is the craziest fire I've ever seen. And we can ask ourselves, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach things? Are you going to have a mindset? Thomas Edison built his mind to never see the negative like that. He was always looking for solutions. Nothing was going to get him down. He was not a failure. And no matter what goes on, he's looking for opportunities. And we can see the opportunities now before us. We've had so many speakers throughout the day that's talking about ways to focus your mind, focus on those relationships, develop and distinguish yourself from everyone else in the playing field, because you have every right to be just as successful as you want to be. And the capability is yours. You have social media that's free. If you don't have the money to market yourself, guess what? It's free. It's just like Thomas Edison saying, hey, where we can get some money? You don't even have to worry about that. You can do this. And so I just wanted to end on that. Like, please look around. Don't look at the fire as the end of your life, the end of your career. Get some marshmallows out, some hot dogs, and let's throw some hot dogs. Like, we're going to have a party, okay? We're seeing the opportunities that are within us and before us. So we thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate this. We're going to have Tabby and Mike come to the stage real quick.